Chelsea and sacking managers. It's something that has been a tried and tested tradition for nearly 20 years at this point. That is because ever since Roman Abramovich had first taken over the club in 2004, hiring and firing became very much the norm at Chelsea Football Club. Its latest victim is this man, Graham Potter, who has lost his job incredibly in less than about 6 months actually doing the job, because don't forget, in the 6 months that he was there, one of those months he lost to the FIFA World Cup. But as I said, he's incredibly not the only man to have suffered such a fate. In fact, more often than not, if you're a manager at the London-based club, you go in with the knowledge that there's every chance that if things start to go south, your job is going to be the first one on the line. And that has happened a lot, as we're going to find out in this particular video, because what we're going to do is look at each manager that Chelsea have sacked since 2004, which is of course when the Roman Abramovich era had well and truly begun at the club. And you'll see that there's a variety of reasons as to why some of these managers got sacked. But a lot of the sackings were arbitrary at best and made no sense in many other ways. So without further ado, let's just check in and see all of these sackings. We're starting with this man, Claudio Ranieri. He was the manager before Roman Abramovich had taken over, and unfortunately he was the first casualty of the Roman Abramovich era. He had won no trophies, but he had actually taken the club up a level, because under him they became a club that were regularly competing in the Champions League as well as being a force in domestic cups. So he did take them somewhere, but unfortunately he wasn't considered a good enough manager to be leading Chelsea by Abramovich, and so in came this man, Jose Mourinho. The special one rocked up at Chelsea, having won the Champions League with Porto, stayed the Chelsea boss for 3 full seasons, and in that time won 2 Premier Leagues, an FA Cup and 2 League Cups as well. However, he was sacked in September 2007, and he was really the first major sacking, because he was someone who many thought would be a dynastic manager at Chelsea. But he was sacked after he had a falling out with Abramovich, and believe you me when I say, he was not the last manager to go in such a similar way. Thereafter, he was replaced by AVRAM Grant, who incidentally was one of the reasons why Mourinho got the sack, because Grant was installed in a pretty powerful position at Chelsea, and according to Mourinho, he felt that Grant had way too much autonomy. Grant was brought in, he only managed the Chelsea for a single season. He finished second in the Premier League, he reached the final of the Champions League where they lost to Manchester United, and he was then sacked at the end of the season because, well, he wasn't able to deliver the Champions League trophy that Roman Abramovich so badly coveted. And then he was also replaced very, very shortly, and this time he was replaced by a manager who had a lot of pedigree. How so? Because the man who replaced him was Luis Felipe Scolari, the man who had won the World Cup in 2002 with Brazil, when he thought natural winner, perfect fit for Chelsea. He didn't even last a whole season. He came in the 2008-09 season. The form under him was up and down and everywhere else in between, and he got sacked in February, and he was replaced by Gus Hiddink on an interim basis, and Hiddink left after leading the club to an FA Cup. At that point you're thinking, okay, Scolari was a disaster, who do they get next? They went for Carlo Ancelotti, another very renowned manager, someone who's won multiple league titles now, and even back then was considered one of the finest managers in Europe. Well, he was the Chelsea boss for 2 full seasons, and in fact in his first season, the 2009-10 season, he won the Premier League and FA Cup double, played some of the best football that Chelsea fans had seen in years, and it was a very, very good side. And then unfortunately the 2010-11 season brought no trophies and a second place finish in the league, and it was Ancelotti who paid the price with his job being removed. And many people at that point were not very happy at the fact that Ancelotti was sacked, because he'd done relatively well, probably didn't get enough backing in the transfer market, but by that point hiring and firing had well and truly become part of the DNA and culture at Chelsea. However, that was all about to change, because they went in for this man, Andre Villas-Boas, young manager, dynamic. You're thinking, yes, this is someone who can build a dynasty at Chelsea. If it sounds familiar to Graham Potter, then, well, yes, it was very, very similar. In fact, it was arguably worse, because Villas-Boas was given some backing in the transfer market, but again, consistency in terms of results, style of play, and falling out with Not just the senior players at the club, but also the fans ended up costing him his job in March 2012. To compound his woes further, after he lost his job, he was replaced by his assistant manager, former Chelsea legend Roberto de Matteo, who ended up doing the unthinkable by winning Chelsea the UEFA Champions League title. He then was given the job on a full-time basis, but like his predecessor, did not manage to last out the entire season. He was there in the 2012-13 season, but and despite the fact that he'd won the UCL, the UEFA Champions League, he ended up sacked in November 2012. Why? Because not only was Chelsea's league form at that point very bad, they were also knocked out of the Champions League in the group stages itself, which was a big no-no considering that they had won the title only a few months back and that there had been plenty of investment in the squad as a whole. He was replaced on an interim basis by Rafael Benitez, a former Liverpool manager who proved so unpopular with the Chelsea fans that they'd be chanting Rafa out at him every single time there was a home game. However, right after that, just to make things so much sweeter for Chelsea, the return of Jose Mourinho took place, and you're thinking, okay, this time around, maybe you're seeing a different Mourinho, maybe he'll last longer than 3 seasons, and maybe this time he'll build on something sustained. Yeah, not so much. He won the Premier League and the League Cup in his second season. That was about it, because third season he ended up getting sacked after overseeing a run of form that was so bad that it left defending champions Chelsea closer to the relegation zone than it did to the top 4. So they've actually sacked Jose Mourinho, a manager who's won 2 Champions League titles twice. That really takes some doing as a club, but as I said, it very much is the Chelsea way. Thereafter, they brought in Antonio Conte, who actually, ended up putting them right back at the summit of English football, because in his first season, he won the Premier League at an absolute canter. Second season was less successful, but he still managed to win an FA Cup. However, he ended up falling out with the board and the entire top structure, because a lot of the times the players he wanted, the board were not able to either give him, or they were giving him alternatives. If that sounds like a familiar story with Antonio Conte, it's because it has since happened at Inter Milan and Tottenham Hotspur as well. So you can't say you won 4-1, but that is exactly what happened. And despite the fact that he won 2 trophies in 2 seasons, he too was given the sack. His successor Maurizio Sarri, incredibly, was not given the sack, because he left Chelsea having won a trophy, but he left off his own accord. He did not actually get sacked by Chelsea, but the man who succeeded Sarri was Frank Lampard, a Chelsea legend, the club's highest goal scorer, someone who even now has his own banners up at Stamford Bridge. He's that beloved. He came in rather surprisingly in the 2019 season, because he only had 1 season of managerial experience prior to that, and that too was in the 2nd division with Derby County. So it wasn't exactly, he didn't have a glittering resume or anything like that. It was the fact that he was a legendary player that he got the job. He won no trophies, but his lasting legacy was introducing a raft of youth players from the academy, and many of whom are still at the club, some of whom have since moved, but it started or established the pathway from the academy to the first team. However, he too saw a lot of inconsistent results and got the sack in January 2021 when the club brought in Thomas Tuchel, who then surprised everyone by going on to win the Champions League. However, with Tuchel, he did end up getting a rather good run of form, because remember, when he came in, Chelsea were 9th in the table. They finished in the top 4 in the 2020-21 season, won the Champions League. In his second season, they won the UEFA Super Cup and the FIFA Club World Cup as well. You'd think that, considering the fact that the ownership changed and, you had the Todd Bowley-led consortium come in, they bought out Roman Abramovich, they wanted to stick with Tuchel, there was a falling out there, and then he got sacked, which is something that a lot of fans did not like, by the way, because they were very fond of Tuchel. Tuchel was very fond of them, and many fans believed that he could be that dynastic manager who'd be there for at least 5, 6, 7 seasons. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and he was also, sacked and replaced. And the man who replaced him? Graham Potter. And for Potter, I think this is probably the most ignominious of sackings, because he came into Chelsea with a reputation as being one of the finest young English managers, and he only lasted 6 months in the job. 6 months. I know getting sacked by Chelsea is no big deal, but in these 6 months, he unfortunately had very up and down results, and they were more down than up. Despite the fact that there was a lot of expenditure made, clearly the board, the owners lost a little bit of faith, and after a rather limp 2-0 loss to Aston Villa, he too was given the sack and has joined the latest manager to actually be paid off by the club and told to leave before his contract actually got over. As I said, very much a sordid long tail of managers getting hired, fired, hired again, fired again. It's something that very much has been part of Chelsea's DNA, and we thought that might change with the Roman Abramovich ownership ending. But even Roman Abramovich never sacked two full-time managers in the same season. That's exactly what Clear Lake Capital and the Todd Boehly, ownership has done. Hopefully now whoever they find next and who they get to manage is someone who's given some time as well as investment. Investment hasn't been a problem, but time certainly has been, and hopefully whoever Chelsea get will be there for at least 3, 4, 5 seasons, because expecting anything more than that at this club does seem to be nothing more than a fallacy. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to like it, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap that bell icon, leave us a comment. Also follow us on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, and last but not least, don't forget to download the SportsTick app. Also, if you're already on the channel, go ahead, check out some other videos that we've done. For now though, from my side, goodbye.